Hello everyone and welcome to Startup Zone Talk. I'm here today with Jeanne. She's the co-founder of Recode. Also, she's a refugee rights advocate. Welcome to our show, Jeanne.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so maybe I will start with my usual questions. Can you tell us about your background? Where are you from?
Sure.
What type of student you were in the school? Let's say if I was your classmate, what type of classmate you will be?
Okay, yeah. So I'm French and I grew up in France in a small town called Aix-en-Provence. So it's in the southeast. So I don't know if you've been to France, but it's quite close to Marseille.
I've never been, but my father went there.
Okay, yeah. So it's quite a nice country town, I guess. So yeah, I grew up there, went to high school there, went to university there, and until I went on exchange in Sweden where I met my husband and then went to live in Australia with him. My high school was great. I had some really great years in high school and I don't know what type of student I was. I think that I had good marks, but I don't think I was so focused on studying.
Okay. So you mean you were not like the nerd student?
No, I don't think I was a nerd. But I think definitely I didn't stand by injustice. I think that I was a little bit irreverent with professors where I would challenge some things that they would say or the way they would treat certain students. So maybe that's what people would remember of me, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How can you tell us the journey? How did you end up here in Malaysia?
Sure. So like I said, my husband is from Australia. I moved to Australia so we could be together. And in 2014, he was offered a job here in Malaysia. And I'd never really traveled in Southeast Asia, but he had, and he really loved it. So he convinced me to move here. And as it turned out, there were a few organizations that did some work with refugees and especially around legal aid. So that's kind of how we ended up in Malaysia through my husband's job.
Okay, I see. And what did you study in university?
I studied law.
You studied law?
Specifically international humanitarian law and refugee law.
Okay,
yeah.
that was in Sweden?
I studied in France and in Sweden, yeah.
In France and Sweden?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So what is the story of Recode? How did you come up with this idea or this project?
So, like I said, I was working in legal aid in Malaysia with refugees and asylum seekers, and for about 2 years. And I think a lot of the questions that my clients would ask after I had helped them with the application for refugee status with the UN was, how is there a way that you can help me get a job?
Because it's very difficult for refugees to get a job. And I think legally they're not allowed.
Yeah, they can't. And so I always felt quite powerless because there was nothing that I could help them with at the time. So when my husband went to study for his MBA, I went with him, and so I had access to all these resources, and it was like this really big business school. So I thought, well, I have some time. Yes, I'm a lawyer, but there must be a business solution to the issues that refugees are facing in Malaysia. So my husband and I drove down from Fontainebleau, where his school was, to my hometown, which is about a 7-hour drive, and we talked about many, many different ideas, and we ended up on a coding school because it's a skill that's very much in demand, probably the skill that is the most in demand in the world right now. It's quite lucrative and it can be done remotely, which means that as a refugee in Malaysia, you could do coding work for a company outside of Malaysia, which would put you in a category where technically it's not illegal for you to do that. So that's why we ended up doing this.
Okay, so they can be like a freelancer, they don't need the job permit or the traditional way of going to job. So you started that not in Malaysia. This is what I understand.
So the ideation was done outside of Malaysia, as well as, you know, building the business plan, talking to people that had built coding schools before, you know, understanding, you know, what was needed to do that and what kind of format. Because I had lived in Malaysia for about 3 years at the time, and I'd worked with many refugees, I felt that I had a good understanding of what their challenges and what they were missing, you know, like what would fill that need of livelihood, right? Like what would be the ideation of Recode was done when my husband was at INSEAD, and, you know, we worked on the business plan, we talked to a lot of I guess livelihoods experts and also people that had set up some coding schools for refugees before to get a sense of what format would make the best sense. And, you know, it's always good to hear from other people's experiences because they would have made mistakes, so they can share these mistakes with us, so maybe we can avoid them.
So you started this with your husband,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
So do you have any other co-founders?
We obviously needed someone that knew how to code. So it was Sangya, the third co-founder. So she was like the technical expert on the team.
Okay, so she take care of the technical
so any sort of questions that we had around, you know, is it reasonable for a group of students who haven't done coding before to do a coding bootcamp over 3 months or over 4 months? Would they have learned enough skills once they graduate? Like, how many days a week do you think that's necessary? Which languages do you think would be the best?
Okay, and what is the size, let's say, of your team who's doing the training?
So once we moved back to Malaysia, the team was Alex and I, and then we had a volunteer teacher that taught the weekend workshops. And then once we were able to secure some money to launch the full-time bootcamp, I hired a full-time instructor and I hired 2 teaching assistants, and we also have 2 volunteer teaching assistants. So right now the team is 1, 2, 3, so 5. Sorry. 5 people. Yeah.
And how do you sustain? Is there any way of income for your project, or is it like a charity project?
So we want to work with the principle of a social enterprise where we generate enough income that it covers the costs. We're not looking to generate profit necessarily. So the model that we're looking at the moment is for us to set up a lab where we would actually be hired to do some coding work, and some of the best graduates would kind of join the team that would work on the projects. So let's say there's a startup that wants to create, an MVP. They need to do, I don't know, like they're going to pitch somewhere and they need to have like this app as an MVP. They could hire us to do that project, and our instructor could be project manager, and we would have a team of a few of the students who would be able to get work experience.
Okay, so a startup or a corporate can assign you a project and you do it, and they will pay you for that.
Yeah, they will pay the company.
This way you have the income. In the same time, you can train more students to acquire those skills.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay. What skills do you teach your students?
Which languages?
Languages, platforms?
Okay, so we teach HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Ruby on Rails, and some databases. The reason we teach Ruby is because my instructor says it's the easiest language to learn. And it's a great basis to start with to then learn other languages. So in the bootcamp, there is a really big focus on really, really, really being in control of the basics and of, a certain number of languages that will help you be able to learn other languages as you go. Because in regular boot camps, they just teach you a lot of different languages. Like you'll have boot camps that are much shorter, where you'll learn Python as well. You'll learn, I don't know, Node.js,
Java.
And then people come out of it and they're like, I don't know what I've learned. So we really put a lot of focus on them really coming out with strong skills with these languages, so that it's easier for them to learn later on. Yeah.
And those corporate or startups, are they most of them, are they in Malaysia or from overseas?
So we haven't done much business development yet, because we've been focusing on the bootcamp, and actually it's ending next week. But we have been contacted by a couple of Malaysian companies that are actually interested, and I was saying we're really struggling to find web developers.
Okay. I think there's a lot of shortage here in the market.
Yeah, so
for developers.
That's also the reason why we did it, because we knew that there was a talent shortage.
Okay, great. What are the challenges you face, let's say, on daily basis, and how you overcome them?
With Recode itself, or
with Recode.
I think we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that the way we teach the bootcamp is going to be the most efficient for the students, right? Because they have a limited amount of time, because they're in class Monday to Thursday, and we've left Friday, Saturday, Sunday free, so they could have some job where they have some sort of income. So we want the Monday to Thursday to be, worth it for them.
So they study 2 days a week?
They study 4 days a week.
4 days a week.
Yeah. So I think the challenge has been to get the class to a level where they move through the curriculum at a similar pace. Because when we first started, we had students who maybe, if you take a scale, you had students that were here and students that were there. So it makes it quite hard to teach the class in a uniform way. So I think that was our main challenge, and I think that now that we have a smaller number where we have been able to achieve this, and when you look at where they started and where they are now, it's quite an amazing progression. So yeah.
Okay, great. Is there a message you want to, let's say, tell the Malaysian government or the Malaysian people about refugees? Can you tell them how they can be helpful, or can you tell them how can they help refugees?
I think definitely granting refugees the right to work would make a really big difference. I think both for refugees and Malaysians, because if refugees had the right to work, then they would work with Malaysians, and then they would get to know each other, and then they would realize we're actually not so different. We have a lot in common. We share a lot of values. We share similar struggles. And so I think that's number one. Number two would be refugees really are an untapped talent. They're really grateful, at least the ones that are part of the bootcamp and the ones that I have had as clients, they are really grateful to be in Malaysia, where they feel they are much safer than where they are before. And they really just want to be part of the society and work like anyone else.
And be productive.
And so they will be committed, they will be loyal, they will probably stay in your company a lot more than any other employee. So yeah, number two would definitely be they are an untapped talent. And number three is they are smart. Many of my clients and many of the people in the bootcamp, they have like bachelor degrees or master's degrees, and these are going to waste in Malaysia. Like it's just, that should be used,
Yeah.
So I think that's the, these are the three things.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Okay, before we end, is there any lesson or a story you have learned through your journey and you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, definitely persistence. Being persistent is what I think will get anyone anywhere that they want to be. And I think I can't help but think about the story of one of the students who he'd applied 3 times to be part of weekend workshops, and the 3rd time he was successful. And he was just absolutely thrilled to be able to join the weekend workshop. And following that, he applied for the full-time boot camp, and he made it. And today he's part of the graduating class, and he is one of the best students. And he, you know, even when he struggles, he always keeps this attitude of, this is hard, but I have to persist, I have to continue, work hard, and I'll be able to make it. And definitely to see this makes me think, when I complain about something that is difficult, I'm like, okay, this person is working hard to be able to do this in much, much harder circumstances than me. So, you know, suck it up, and yeah.
Jeanne, thank you very much for coming to Startup Zone. And our viewers, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you in next episode with another amazing guest. Bye.